Get ready. It's time for the Idaho Podcast with your host, Danny Ventura. Welcome to the Idaho Podcast, where we feature the people who live, work, and play in Idaho. Thanks for joining us today. Today, my guest is Chelsea Oyler, and Chelsea is the founder of the Elevated Leadership Company. Welcome to the show, Chelsea.
Thank you so much.
We always start with your Idaho story. So what is your Idaho story?
Thanks for asking. I am an Idaho native. I know we're kind of a unique breed anymore, to especially in the Treasure Valley. It's hard to find people who grew up, born, raised in Idaho, but I grew up on a cattle ranch just outside of Salmon, Idaho. So I grew up on the famous Salmon River. We had 1,000 acres, 400 head of cattle, and it was just family run. So I had 3 older brothers, my mom and my dad, and we ran the cattle ranch all the way until my dad passed in 2009. And so we kept running the place for a couple of years after that. But my entire upbringing was that. So I learned the Idaho way very young. I learned how to work very hard, work with your hands to, bring something to life. And I learned how to work with the land and just really developed a respect for the state of Idaho and everything that it has to offer. And then on top of that, being in a very touristly central, part of the state, the famous Salmon River, the River of No Return, I got to see what brings other people to Idaho, right? Just the love of what a river can do, how a river can bring people together, and how being on a river really just it brings out the most amazing parts of people. It's just there's a connection to the water, there's a connection to the river, there's a connection to the land that I just fell in love with and never have left. I've never lived in any other state, although I had many opportunities to move to the Treasure Valley for school, met my husband, and I don't think I could ever get him out of Idaho anyway. So I think we'll be here for the long haul.
So you were raised clearly with a lot of hard work and a lot of discipline on a cattle ranch.
Absolutely.
1,000 acres. Holy smokes. That's quite large.
Yes.
So were you actively involved in the daily duties? And
Yes, 100%. So what was really interesting is not only did we live in a very, very small rural town, we lived 30 miles outside of the town. So my mother drove the school bus. So because it just made sense for her to do so, to get us all to school. We grew up on the Salmon River Road. So it's a very dangerous road. People die on that road every single year. So she decided to drive the school bus when we all started going to school together, because she just had this sense of wanting to be with us and also making sure we got to school safe. And then as we all grew up and got driver's licenses and started doing that on our own, it would take me 30 minutes just to get to school in the morning, 30 minutes to get home after school. And so it wasn't easy just to run back and forth. So our parents needed us so much on the ranch. We were only allowed to play one sport or have one extracurricular activity because we needed to be there. We were the hands on the ranch. We didn't have any hired hands until my brothers actually left the house. And my parents realized very quickly that just me and them could not handle the 1,000 acres and the 400 head of cattle. So it was a very large operation. There was no side jobs other than my mother driving the school bus just to have that additional connection and sense of safety with us.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah.
Having been here your whole life, what are some of your favorite things about Idaho? I mean, there's a ton. We've only been here a year and a half, right? From my perspective, there's a ton, but I love to hear from natives. What are some of your favorite things here?
There's nothing that compares to what Idaho has to bring as far as the outdoors. So, growing up, my family hunted, fished, and we really didn't do much whitewater rafting at that point, which is so funny because as a child, I grew up on one of the most famous rivers in the United States for whitewater rafting, yet I never whitewater rafted. We did the simple sections where we would jump on like an inner tube or one of those little tiny blow up boats that you can get from Walmart now, but it wasn't the whitewater the Salmon River is known for. We didn't do that when I was young. I had several friends that did. Even in high school, I had several friends that were guides during the summer for their summer jobs. But it wasn't until even in the last 5 years that my family really started becoming whitewater rafters. So the rivers are a huge part of it for me. Just for some reason, there's some connection that the rivers have for me that just hold me here. And it's just, I become a completely different person when I'm on a boat on that water, when I'm on a raft on that water, or when I'm on a kayak on that water. And just the ability to be a part of what naturally transpires here in Idaho
Hmm.
every single season, right? So we come inside in the winter months and we see what happens in the mountains. They just get dumped on with snow and everything just goes quiet. It's that, hibernation period. And then everything awakens in the spring and you start to see the runoff and you start to see the impact of the animals and how we start to interact with nature. And just watching that four season, that full transition in Idaho and being able to have a huge part of life in every single one of those seasons is really what I love.
Hmm. So well said. Wow. We had the opportunity to raft the Payette River, which was fantastic because we love rafting and we've rafted several places, but that's so far in Idaho. That's the only place we've rafted. We're looking forward to several others, and I would love to go down the Salmon River as
Yeah.
well. But so much fun, and it to your point, you do become kind of one with nature when especially when you're in a higher class rapids.
Yes.
I think that really makes you become at one with nature because it's no
Absolutely.
longer about just yourself. It's about
Yeah.
survival and the survival of everybody in that raft.
Yeah.
But it's in an exhilarating way though. So
Absolutely. And naturally I'm a type A control freak. And so there's this sense of surrender when you get on the river.
that's a great point. I never thought about that because I am also very much type A. Type some people say I'm triple A, like the Automobile Club, but you're right. You kind of do have to surrender because you're not in control like you think you are, and so there's a reality to that. So
Yes.
that's awesome. So you're married, you're a mother of two, and I know that you love the outdoors as you just shared. But what are some of the other things you enjoy doing with your family in Idaho, and some of your favorite places to go?
Yes. Love that. Thank you for that question.
Mhm.
Um, just continue to highlight Idaho and all the beautiful things that it has to offer. So we do a little bit of everything. So clearly we are on the river a lot. We whitewater raft, we kayak, we golf, and that's one of our favorite things to do as a family. I actually have a 5 and an 8 year old, and even from the time that my oldest, my 8 year old was 2, we were hitting golf courses. So we love to travel in that way. We'll find golf courses around the state to go play at and experience as a family. We hike, we mountain bike, we're big campers. So and I'm not talking like pull into a paved pad and plug in campers. We are the off the road campers.
Oh,
Well,
yeah.
we'll go 30 miles on a dirt road out into the middle of nowhere
Wow.
because that's just how we grew up in Idaho. Uh, the ability to connect with nature when you are completely unplugged, when your cell phone doesn't work, when you can't, plug into a water pump or the satellite dish is just a really beautiful experience for our family. And that's how I want to raise our children here. I want them to experience how we were raised, where we did the land entertains us,
Hmm.
not an iPad or a television set.
Right. Or
And
anything you can plug in.
yes, and in today's day and age, it's very difficult to unplug, and so that's what we enjoy doing is trying to find as many opportunities to do that as possible.
Good for
We
you.
we are unless it's the winter, we are rarely inside, and when it is the winter, we're doing our best to get out on the slopes as much as possible too. So we just want to be moving all the time. We don't
That's
like sitting still very much.
That's awesome. My wife's idea of camping is no room service, but she is a good camper though. We have camped a lot over the years with motor homes and the like. But again, creature comforts. We did start out early tent camping, but dry camping is not really her thing for sure. And I don't even know so much anymore at my age that it's my thing anymore.
Yeah.
But I always admire folks who do it, and it always
Yes.
looks like fun. And to your point, you just have to get away and be at one and nothing keeping you tethered to electronics or the internet or the world. And there's something to be said about that.
Yes.
So
Absolutely.
good for you. You also founded Elevated Leadership
Yes.
in 2018. And it was founded for one reason, and that is to help more women find massive success in business without sacrificing their time,
Yeah.
family, freedom, or self. And I love your belief statements. If I'm going to share that with the listeners, your belief statement says, we believe that our world evolves through business and we need more women on the front lines. We elevate your business and your life so you can elevate the world. Very powerful statement. What's behind that? What got you into this? It seems like a passion to you. So share that as well.
Absolutely. I think as with a lot of business owners, our passion is because of something that we went through or we experienced, right? So to back up a little bit and give you a little more background on that, when growing up on the cattle ranch, I watched my dad work himself to the bone, right? There are no vacations. There's no time off. And it is from the moment you wake up to the moment you go to sleep. There's really no pauses. And I remember watching him, being sick, or even when he was diagnosed with cancer and going through radiation and chemo treatments, and unable to let his body rest to the degree that it needed to beat the thing, right? And so I would watch him peel himself off the couch when I could see that his body was fighting itself, and go out and feed the cattle, right? Christmas mornings. When we woke up Christmas morning, we did not go straight to opening presents. We went and fed the cattle. And then we got to come in and open the presents. It's just a very different lifestyle. And so growing up as a kid, I remember, these really poignant times where watching our lifestyle and what that looked like. My dad took 2 vacations in the entire time I remember, and it was to go hunting with my brothers kind of in the back mountains. Like,
Wow.
that was it. That was our normal. And then looking at these other families of kids that I grew up with and seeing a very different experience, them going on family vacations, them their parents taking time off, all this space, it was just very clear juxtaposition. And I remember asking him at one point, kind of when you're in that phase where you're trying to decide what it is that you want to do when you grow up. And I asked him, why did you choose this? And he said, because I could never work for anyone else. And so my young brain put together, entrepreneurship means killing yourself. So I never want to do that, right? It means you're married to your business, you're handcuffed, you can never get away. That's what this means. And so if that's what that means, then I don't want to do that. And so when I left the house, I had my eyes were set on like that corner office. I was 100% certain I was going to go into corporate America. I was going to work my way up to the top, have that corner office by the time I was 30. It was very driven. And I started down that path, and I worked in many industries. I worked my way up the ladder very quickly. I was incredibly successful. And in my last role, I got one step away from that corner office. And I just remember this moment in looking at that corner office and seeing it for what it really was. And I saw my dad. And I thought, well, wait a minute, that's no different than what my dad had, right? They never took time off. Everything was on their shoulders, the stress, the pressure. And it just became this question in my mind, why does it have to be this way? And so it really set me on this mission of how do we help entrepreneurs find that secret sauce, that magic recipe where they're not handcuffed to their business, where they're not married to it, where they're not able to go to their kids' soccer games or take a family vacation because they're so just tied to that business. And I found that recipe in corporate with the team that I had, because when my last role, I took on a very large team. And for 3 years, I ran it just like everybody else around me did, where I was needed. I put out all the fires. My phone rang constantly. I wasn't able to take the vacations that I wanted to take, all the things, right? My personal life sacrificed on behalf of this role. And I remember a mentor saying to me, and this is what changed everything. I was considering going on a vacation, and I was kind of venting to him about how I was going to pay for it, right? I don't even want to go because it's going to be so painful when I come back. And he said to me, Chelsea, you're a good leader when your team doesn't need you anymore. And it was this wake up call for me. And it sent me on a path to figure out it's not about me being the smartest person in the room or giving them all the answers or being the person that they need. It's about me empowering them and getting to them to the point where they're thinking critically, where they're solving their own problems, and where they're empowered to make autonomous decisions and move the business forward. And if we can all have a common goal, and I can find those people who have that capability, and if they don't have it, I can help build that, then we just get to the results so much faster and smoother, and it's a lot more fun. And so I found that recipe in corporate, and I realized that I could take that to entrepreneurs to really give them the gift that my dad never had.
Mm-hmm. That's you're speaking my language, and I love that. It actually makes my heart beat. But it's so true. We have to rely upon a well qualified, well trained team, because you're only as good as your team.
Yes.
But so often, many of us, not necessarily because we're control freaks, but we want things so perfect, and we're so driven by success that we feel as if we take a step back for even one moment, what could happen? It's always the what ifs. Well, if you trust in your team, the what if still might happen. but you trust in them so much that they're going to come up with a strategy to overcome whatever may happen, maybe as well or better than you would have, whatever solution you would have provided, right?
Absolutely.
And I learned that in my own career. And it's so valuable because that's where freedom comes from. And not only freedom in leadership, but also growth in leadership. And I also think it makes the strongest leaders and the best leaders. When you ask people, who are some of the leaders you admire most in your life? People you know, not people that you've heard of or read about. It's typically those folks who gave them the trust, the empowerment, the development, and the respect, frankly, to allow them to do what they're gifted at, and let them do what they're trained to do. And it's so important because even as A plus personality people, we both want the same thing, right? We're just a little more resistant to give it, but until you learn.
Yes.
Right.
And that's what I found in working with entrepreneurs is I find a lot of times, and I work with small businesses, but what I find a lot of times is what's holding them back from that next level of growth is that ability to release some control, is that ability to learn how to delegate and to set the guidelines and the boundaries so that they can release a little bit and step back a little bit and let people do what they do best. But I skipped over part of your question. I just realized in going back to, why am I woman focused? Why is my mission what it is? And really, it's because I truly believe that entrepreneurship is what evolves the world. When you look at most businesses, they're there because there was a problem that needed to be solved. And that is how we evolve. We have a problem, it needs a solution. And most of the time, there's an entrepreneurial minded person that comes up with that solution and puts it into place. That's what business is. It's just solving problems. So we evolve humanity by being business owners, by coming up with solutions to problems that haven't been solved yet. And so that's what really excites me. And when I went out into working with business owners, I just found such a small representation of women. So I started digging into that and wondering, because I'm a woman and I'm here helping all these guys. Where's my women? I really wanted to work with females. And I started doing some research and came across some kind of startling statistics. And it was that the most commonly referenced study is, I think, from back in 2016. We'll find it and we'll link it up in the show notes if that's okay with you, because I want to make sure that we're giving your audience the correct information. But it's very commonly referenced that less than 2% of businesses that reach the 7-figure or beyond mark are women-owned. So that's what's commonly referenced. The study that I found, the latest was from 2019, and that number had gone up to 4%. But when you think about that, when you really sit with that information, that's pretty sad. Mm-hmm. Less than 4% of businesses that reach the 7-figure mark are women-owned. And that kind of just lit a fire with me. And my goal, my burning desire is to change that number, is to change that statistic. Because I believe that if our desire is to solve problems and evolve the world, it can't just be done from the male-dominated mind. If 96% of those businesses are, have a man's head leading them, that we're missing a giant piece of the population that thinks differently, that sees things differently, that has different solutions. And that's really what I want to do.
So how is it that you're going to do that in your mind, right? I know that you target women-owned businesses, but aside from a target demographic, how is it your process is going to help increase those numbers? Because we talked a little bit before we started recording about why that is, because, and you can share some of that if you would, just why is that number so low on behalf of women?
Sure.
And then the secondary question is, how are you going to specifically, or at least in greater detail, help increase those numbers?
Sure. To answer the first question, it's really generational. When you think about our culture, my generation is just coming into this embodiment of it's not just about being a wife and a mother. For several generations, that was the female role. And so we're just shifting. Our society is shifting to putting a different type of value on what women do. Now, that shift has been happening for several decades, but it takes a long time for that to become the norm. And even though that shift has happened, the responsibilities of wife and mother have not changed. In several homes, there has been a shift, and it's so beautiful to see that shift in more of a partnership between husband and wife, father and mother, right? I see so many fathers showing up to volunteer in the school classroom. That is so cool because 2 decades ago, we didn't see that, right? So there's so much evidence that there's change happening. But when you really look at most homes, the primary responsibility for what's inside that home and the humans inside of it really does fall still on the woman's shoulders. And so we wear so many hats. We're pulled in so many directions. And there's a common belief in the women that I work with is that we have to sacrifice one to have the success in the other. I truly believe that a lot of women aren't signing up for the vision that they're really capable of because they believe that they have to sacrifice home, motherhood, and themselves a lot of times in order to achieve that. And that's just something that I want to prove wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe that. And so to the second part of your question, really the primary modality that I work with my clients is building that high performing team within their business that allows them to step back, that allows them to take off some of those hats, to give some of those roles away, that and see that they can grow something bigger than themselves without sacrificing everything to do it.
Hmm. That is great, and that's powerful, and I applaud you for doing that. And that's not to say that you are strictly women. You do help some men entrepreneurs, and as well as you offer something that I just learned from you today. You're certified in hypno breathwork. So tell us a little bit about the hypno breathwork and how that lends to how you're helping some of these women entrepreneurs and men to succeed.
Yes, thank you. It's relatively new to my practice, so I'm pretty excited about it. I was just certified in November in this modality, and really, when you become an entrepreneur, one of the things that I've learned the fastest that I work with my clients all the time on is there are certain things that are just going to hold us back from achieving the results that we want to achieve, right? So, a really simple example would be when you think about how someone was raised. If they were raised in a home where what they heard on a regular basis was people with a lot of money or a lot of success are greedy or they're bad or they're selfish or whatever the case may be, right? That is downloaded in our subconscious minds as a belief. And so if we now take this human that on a subconscious level, they're not even conscious to it, has this hardware program running in their mind that success is bad. It makes me a bad person if I achieve a certain level of success. They are subconsciously going to be sabotaging themselves every step along the way. So they can set these goals, but if their conscious goal and their subconscious belief system is not in alignment, they won't even know why, but they'll continue to come up against blocks. They'll continue to come up against barriers. And so the entire point of hypno breathwork, not the entire point, but the reason I use it in my practice is within a 22-minute session, I have the ability to help get into subconscious mind, find what that belief system or that block is, unprogram it, reprogram a better belief or reality that's in alignment with the goals that they want to achieve. And so in 22 minutes, a lot of times I'll have somebody come out of a session and they'll not even understand what just happened. And all of a sudden they start going back to their strategy and doing the same things that they were doing. And all of a sudden they're working. And so it's a really powerful piece to my business that I didn't have even a year ago. And it's just been so fun to see the results and the transformation with my clients and with their teams. In fact, I did a session just a couple weeks ago with one of my clients that has an entire sales team, and they were all stuck. They were all in this mode at the same time where they weren't getting the results from their dials. They didn't want to pick up the phone. There was all this resistance. And so I came in and we did a hypno breathwork session on her entire team. And what was amazing about it is at the end, as they were sharing, a lot of the stuff they were sharing was really personal, really vulnerable. We had grown men and women in tears in the room, but they were able to connect like, oh my gosh, the resistance that I'm having right now is because of this belief system that I had all the way back in childhood. And I'm now understanding how that's connected. And now that I can see it, I can at least see it and I can start to release it and understand that I don't need to bring that into my reality today.
That is powerful. Now, even though it's called hypno breathwork,
Yes.
it does not involve hypnosis, correct?
Correct.
It's all in, and I'll have you share because I just learned the word. So
Yes.
it's apparently all in breathing technique.
Yes. It is a breathing technique. It's about anywhere from 20 to 24 minutes, 25 minutes. That it's just a circular breath pattern. It's done to music, and during that time, I'm just asking questions and giving cues. So the difference between hypnosis and hypno breath work is in hypnosis, there's generally a suggestion being given to the subject, right? It's now you believe this, or now, right? So that is absolutely not my goal. I want the individual to come up with that own answer in their own mind from their own subconscious brain. So within 8 minutes, I am able to get them through this breath technique into a theta state and accessing their subconscious. So as humans, we spend only 5% of our time in our conscious mind. What that means is 95% of the time, we are running on a subconscious level that we are not aware of. So 95% of our habits, beliefs, and actions are being generated from an unconscious state. It's pretty wild to think
that
about,
is crazy.
right?
Yeah.
And so in 8 minutes, getting into that state where we're able to access and program what we want to program in there. And it's all done through questioning. We'll usually have a specific intention of the practice. I'll ask questions throughout it, and their own mind comes up with the answers, which is why it's not any sort of hypnosis. It's just getting them into that hypnotic state, which is where the name hypno comes from.
And I love that you're saying it's through self-discovery, because self-discovery is where the power comes from. When someone's telling you something, it's way different than you discovering it on your own, right? And that applies across life, whether it's in a career or just personally. When someone's telling you, you do this often, it's annoying. You typically get defensive and you don't realize it actually is annoying until you self-discover in a mirror, or, oh my gosh, I do say that a lot, or I do that a lot. And then that self-discovery causes typically reflection and potential change. But it takes self-discovery I think, to affect permanent and lasting change.
Yes.
So I think that's terrific.
So well said.
Oh, thanks. You help entrepreneurs strategize to scale their businesses. And sometimes you use hypno breath work, and sometimes it's just through your own experiences and your background, for sure. But you also really want to teach them and help them scale their business, while at the same time leading with purpose, vision, and intuition. I think those are three very key words that you use also on your website. Why is leading with purpose, vision, and intuition so fundamental to success for entrepreneur or for any business person, frankly?
Sure. Such a great question. Everything is about purpose. If you ask any individual, and this is wild to me when I start working with my clients, why do you do what you do? A lot of people don't have the answer. When we dig into it, they start to realize, oh, that does make sense why I chose this path, and there is a really deep-rooted answer underneath that. But when we lead with purpose, we have a drive, a calling that's bigger than ourselves. And as humans, as the biological creatures that we are, that combines us with the collective, right? Most of us want to create change. We want to leave the world better than we found it, for example. And that's what a lot of entrepreneurship is about also. And so when we are driven by a purpose that we can visualize, right? So bring in the vision. When we can bring a team of people together around a collective purpose, and they can see what the world looks like when that purpose is carried out, it's a cause that's bigger than themselves. And it's a drive that's stronger than any one person. And it's fulfillment. At the end of the day, we all want to live a fulfilling life. We want to create the idea of a fulfilling career or business. And it just tends to bring people together and keep them in a committed relationship in business for a longer period. And then intuition, I believe that everybody has the answers already inside them. I don't believe that I know anything that anybody doesn't already inherently know. Mm-hmm. It's just helping them find that on their own. And when we are living our life and leading our business, or making the decisions in the business from a place of our own internal innate wisdom, they tend to work out. And my job is just to help people find that.
So what would you say your success rate is with the companies you work with and the entrepreneurs you work with? I mean, is there something that you're measuring, how you measure success, or what would be the litmus test to the effectiveness of what you're providing for them?
Sure. Every client has a different goal. So
Sure.
it's all based on their goal. So I'm what I call a boutique coaching agency. So I don't have a formula that I go out and use this, take everybody through the same steps. My goal when I sit down with a client is I want to know what you're looking for. What are the pain points in your business? What are the results that you're looking to achieve that you haven't maybe achieved yet? A lot of times when I sit down with a business owner for the first time, they've had the same revenue or profit goal, for example, for multiple years and they haven't hit it. And they're like beating their heads against a wall. And so it's really what are your goals and have we achieved them? That's the litmus test. And sometimes that changes, right? So, for example, a client I've been working with for 2 years, when she hired me 2 years ago, she's in the mortgage industry and has a branch here in the Treasure Valley, has several employees. And when she hired me, we were at the height of the real estate market, right? And her problem at that point was I've built this unicorn team and everybody's trying to recruit them. If I lose any one of these people, I don't think I can service the clientele that I have. Well, when the plan that we put together was plan A, and within 2 months of working together, everything changed because the market shifted, rates spiked, and everybody knows where we're at right now, right? So that it changes very quickly.
Sure.
In 2 years of working together, that goal and that litmus test and that measure of success is very different. And now the measure of success is we're making sure that she has the right size team, the right people in those seats, and that she's poised for when the market comes back. And we've done that very successfully.
Yeah, business is very dynamic and it's real time, and circumstances change frequently and often. So, to your point, sometimes the best laid out plan may not come into effect because of situational changes. But at least there was a plan, and then you shifted and you relevered and you came up with a better plan to adapt to what the shifting things were around her. So that's good. Good for you.
Absolutely.
So if people want to use you or contact you to help them with their business or to help them as an entrepreneur, what is the best way for them to reach you? I know you have a fantastic website, and I'll put that up in the notes. But what is your website, and is there a great email to reach you at?
Perfect. Yes. Elevatedleadershipco.com or chelseaoyler.com will both go to the same place. You'll be able to find me there. As you said, you'll link it in the show notes. Thank you for that. And you can also find me on the socials. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, so that's a great way to find me under Chelsea Oyler, and also Instagram.
That's perfect. And be sure to reach out to Chelsea because she's a terrific resource for any entrepreneur who wants to continue their success and go to the next level and scale their business. And again, even though she works mostly with women, she's open to helping everyone out. So and I love that. So that's good. Well, we always end up with the tip of the show because TIP is the acronym for the Idaho podcast. So I'm going to ask you, Chelsea, what is your tip for our listeners today?
Oh, you even warned me of this. And now I'm like, oh no, what was I going to say? So the first thing that comes to mind is really discover you as an individual. What drives you? What is your passion? What is that purpose? And make sure that you're only building, whether it's your career or your business or your life, make sure you're building it around that, because that's where true fulfillment comes from. When we know what we're about and why we do what we do every single day, it's just a lot more fun. And we generally get a lot more results out of it.
That resonates with me because of the book Start With Why by Simon Sinek. Terrific book. And your point was a little deeper than he goes, but I think we all need to know our why. And when we know our why and what our purpose is, everything else forms around it. And that's what you drive towards, because it's easy to say what I do or how I do it, much more difficult to say why I do it, right? I do this podcast. You know what a podcast is, you know how I do it because you're listening to it. But why do I do it? Because I love communications. I love sharing people's stories. And that's my why. It's making transformational change by sharing other people's stories. It's not about me. And that's my why. And that's what keeps my heart beating towards the podcast. So I think that's very, very well said. And I appreciate that tip very much.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
And thank you for the honor of being on. I've really appreciated our conversation. It's been a lot of fun.
Well, it's a pleasure to get to know you and to understand your business. And I Elevated Leadership Company, Chelsea Oyler, you want to reach out to her. And I love this idea of hypno breathwork. I'm going to look more into this. This was something, real foreign to me. And now I'm really intrigued by it. And so I might be contacting you. So
perfect.
But Chelsea, thanks again for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on the Idaho Podcast. Be sure to check us out on the idahopodcast.com, and please subscribe to be a regular listener. And also you'll be notified of any upcoming guests and any new information that we can provide. Thank you. Make it a great week, and we'll see you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.